This is actually a story that was inspired by an article that I read a few years ago. So I don't even remember where it was, but I know you read a lot, I read a lot. It was just somewhere in a paper I was reading, and it was about a NICU nurse who sort of fell in love with this abandoned baby and ended up adopting her. And I was like, oh, that is such a special story. And so I have a good friend who is a NICU nurse actually in Colorado. I'm in North Carolina. And she said, oh my gosh, that's so weird. Like this just happened in my hospital. One of the nurses I work with just ended up adopting a baby. And I love to write about family and how we create our family and, what that looks like. And so this immediately pinged in the back of my mind, like, this is something that I want to write a book about. But this was years ago, and I just sort of filed it away. And so something about this character of Daisy just sort of started nibbling at me, like maybe a year and a half ago, and kind of who she was and her backstory, and her being this nurse and kind of forming this connection with this abandoned baby for a number of reasons, from her own background. But when I sat down to sort of start writing her and kind of fleshing her out, I don't know about you, but I'm not a big like outliner. I'm a real fly by the seat of your pants kind of person. And I started, kind of working on Daisy and working on the writing of her. And I was thinking about her love interest. And as he was forming to me, I realized he was Mason from my book Under the Southern Sky, which came out in 2021. And Mason was a very secondary character. He was the brother of my main character, Parker. And he had had a real struggle because he was is supposed to be this big famous professional athlete, and he had gotten injured, and really just his life kind of tanked. So at the very end of that book, we see him kind of taking these baby steps to like getting his life back. But I just thought, wonder, what that would be like. And then as I started writing Mason, there was another secondary character in that book called Aunt Tilly, who I've gotten more emails about Aunt Tilly than any character I've ever written in my entire life. And she's this very eccentric Southern aunt. We do not hear from her in Under the Southern Sky. Everything kind of swirls around her. And I thought, what if we heard from Aunt Tilly? There's some real parallels between Aunt Tilly's story and Daisy's story. And so they just sort of all came together. But the thing that I've really liked about writing Daisy's story that I didn't really realize I was doing until after the fact is that I think a lot of times I write kind of what you were saying, where like before the action takes place or like on page one, we see a character's life kind of fall apart and they make a choice to like do something different and go somewhere, and then we watch them build their life back up. And that happens for Daisy, but we're almost sort of watching her fall apart in real time in this story in a couple of different instances. Like we're watching things kind of crumble for her and then watching her build it back up sort of at the same time. And in retrospect, I think that was really interesting as a writer for me to be able to kind of explore, to see, to take us real time through these challenges that she's facing that really kind of surround this baby, but they have a lot more to do with, her own story and her own life and her own background. The baby's everything in the book because she not only, I mean, she's the way that Daisy and Mason meet, first of all. I mean, that is kind of their meet cute. He has rescued this abandoned baby. He runs into this hospital. It's Daisy's first day at this job that is supposed to be sleepy and quiet and nothing goes wrong. She is not in the NICU anymore. She is in the like cozy, you gave birth to a perfect 8-pound baby and we're going to hold it for you while I mean, obviously they do more than that, but this is supposed to be her sleepy job. This is not a code red job. And, Mason comes in with this abandoned baby and, this is how they meet. So it's a meet cute for them, but also, the baby ties everybody's stories together. I mean, the baby is really central to Aunt Tilly's story. The baby is really central to the future of the baseball team. I mean, everything that happens in this story is circling around this baby. All the secrets come out because of this baby. The town is really sent into this spiral because of this baby. It's like, how did this happen in this little town? So, I hadn't really thought of it in that way, but yes, the baby is definitely more of a plot device than an actual character because she's an infant. I mean, she's brand new, so she's not speaking. She's not, but then she's also indicative of, Mason begins thinking about all these things about his life. Like, could he be a father? Could he be ready for that step? Like, is that something that he would want? And, Daisy has envisioned this perfect life for herself where she's going to get married and she's going to have these 2.5 kids in the house. But that hasn't happened for her yet. And so could this be, the way that she starts her family? Like, there's just all these questions that center around this baby. And, but yeah, I guess when you really put it in those terms, she is sort of a plot device. Sports work on so many levels, I think, because one, there's something about, I don't care if it's a big city or a small town, but when people are really invested in a team and they congregate around it, it's like you said, there is like a whole ecosystem. I mean, we're in boys basketball right now, and like my son is in middle school. He's in eighth grade. They won the conference championship last night. Woohoo! But there hundreds and hundreds of people come out for these games. My town has 4,000 people in it. They will have to move games to the high school because they have so many people that it's like over fire code. So, I mean, I just think there's something about these sports that it's like you said, like if you grew up in this town and you played on that team, you're still rooting for that team. But I think there's just win or lose, good or bad. There's just something about the way that towns form around these sports that is just so interesting to me. And I will say on like a little bit of a deeper level, I had also just read this really interesting book about men and women and the ways that our brains develop and the ages that we get to in our lives. Like when we sort of transition from that era of we can learn anything new to like we become an expert at this thing. And the people that have the most difficult time making that transition are former like professional athletes or professional athletes that didn't make it. And so I put a lot of that story, a lot of that book that I was reading. I mean, it was nonfiction, but I put a lot of that into Mason's character too, of like why he had such a hard time, why he couldn't move on. Is it time to move on? And how attached you become to this lure of who you were and how it can really hold you back from who you want to become. I feel like this is one of those books where I'm going to give the reader a happily ever after, but it might not be exactly what they were expecting. Um, and I hope that's okay. I think the happily ever after is the best case scenario for everyone in this story. I think it's the best case scenario for Daisy. I think it's best for Mason. I think it's best for Maisie, who's the baby. Like I think it's best for everyone. Um, but but yeah, I do think that that is something that I do play with a little bit, especially just because I think life doesn't always go exactly according to plan. And I love writing about characters who are in these really kind of gray areas where they have to make really tough decisions about things. And um, I think we are kind of led to believe, especially as children, like this is right and this is wrong. But I think in adulthood, right and wrong so rarely exist. Like there's something in the middle where you're trying to choose the best possible outcome for everyone. But it's really hard to know sometimes when you're in that moment what is the right decision. And of course, you'll see with these characters, I mean, we can try to be selfless, but we're all really internally motivated by what's good for us, even if we think that we're not. And I think that's sometimes what these characters are going through when they're making these big decisions is is this right for me? Is this right for the baby? Is this right for the town? Is this right for Aunt Tilly? Like, is this right? What do we hold on to and what do we let go of? And I love this idea that all of us are really capable of doing the wrong thing, but doing it for the right reason. And a lot of these characters kind of, I think, fall into that trap a little bit of thinking that they're doing the right thing, but then looking back and being like, not the right thing. And sometimes it's hard to know. I mean, hindsight's 2020. So there are definitely a lot of ethical dilemmas in this book, but they all tie together. And I think at the end, I hope the reader is happy with the ending because I was. I think it's a happy ending. So.